gosh, this book might be as good as the Throne of Glass series. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Modern Bookwoman, or Cass, and today we are going to be doing the Mid-Year Book Tag. Now, it's only August 4th, but everybody started this so early that I feel like I'm so far behind because people were jumping the gun and doing this in June, and I wasn't ready to do this in June, and then I was gone for most of July. So, better late than never, I still want to do the Mid-Year Freakout Tag and kind of reflect on my reading so far in 2024. And hopefully you guys want to hear it too, okay? I love getting to know influencers through the tag. It gives me a real good sense of their reading tastes and how I relate to them. And it also always leaves me with a really long list of book recommendations. So get a pen and paper ready and get your coffee or your tea or your water. Make sure you're drinking lots of water right now. It's been so hot here in Idaho, like 100, 105, 108 degrees. So definitely drink your water. But right now I'm enjoying a nice coffee. Let's get into it. In the effort of saving time, I'm going to put thumbnails of the books on the screen rather than show them all to you, just to save time. Because what I did was I combined all the Mid-Year book freakout tags that I could find online because I couldn't just stick with one of them. I liked all the questions and all the tags, and I merged them all together, which means that I ended up with a total of 25 questions. I don't know who to give credit to because there's so many different versions of this tag at this point. What I will say is that I did not make this up. I cannot take credit for it. I am only participating. So I hope you enjoy. The first question is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2024? Okay, one more caveat, you guys. I read a lot of books, okay? I read a lot, more than the average reader. So most of these questions, I can't just pick one book, okay? It's too hard. Even if I pick 10 books, that's only 10% of my reading experience. Picking one book is only 1% of my reading experience because I've almost read 100 books at this point in the year. So bear with me. I will probably have multiple books for each answer, but what I will do is try not to repeat books for each question, okay? So there will be variety here. But I'm sorry, most of these I can't narrow down to just one book. So best book you've read in 2024, When the Moon Hatched, okay? If you haven't watched my vlog, if you haven't been following me, I'm obsessed with When the Moon Hatched. I read it, fell in love with it, had a major book hangover, tried to read some other books, couldn't get into anything else, and then reread When the Moon Hatched less than a week later. So that's how much I loved it. Unfortunately, sequel does not come out until next year, so I am dying right now. But it is a very good book, and you should go pick it up. Another of my favorite books this year was The Silence That Binds Us. It's a YA book, but it does not feel like YA, and it's literary fiction. It is excellent. I feel like every single person should read that book. It's about grief. It's about immigrant families. It's about racism. It's about suicide. So just check trigger warnings, but I just feel like it handles trauma and immigration and racism, the conversations surrounding that and the stigma around suicide so well. It's one of the best books I've ever read. The next book that I have on that for that question is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. It is a retelling of a famous serial murderer who will remain nameless because the point of the book is not to give credit to the serial killer, but to focus on the women whose lives and whose families he ruined, the victims, and how they were all bright young women. If you like true crime, if you like suspense, thriller, mystery, and like women's fiction, I highly recommend this book. It was phenomenal. And all of these so far that I've listed, I listened to the audiobooks and I enjoyed the audio versions. The other book that I will put on this list is The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. This one took me by surprise. It's such a phenomenal book. I highly recommend. It is a contemporary fiction with a romance subplot, and it heavily focuses on grief and specifically losing a partner, and then how to deal with life after loss and finding love again after loss. And man, it handled the topic of grief so well, and I just love that book so much. It is definitely one I will reread again in the future. So, and then I answered these questions before I had finished the Everflame series. I just binged books 1 through 3 in the Everflame series, and they are so good. It's probably going to also be right up there as some of my favorite fantasy series of all time. So I have to give a shout out to the Everflame series as well. Moving on, question number 2. The best sequel you've read so far in 2024. Two Twisted Crowns. Okay, I know some people were disappointed by the second book, but I actually enjoyed the second book more than the first book, and I'm not sure why. I don't generally like dark fantasy or dark romance, and I only picked up this duology because my best friend was like raving about it, like loved the duology, and lots of my other book friends really loved it. So I was like, all right. I really enjoyed the second book because I liked the romance in the second book. There is a lot more romance focus, and I just really enjoyed the characters that are featured in that part of the story. So I think because I expected to not like it, and because I just had low expectations to begin with, I wasn't disappointed. I actually was pleasantly surprised, and I really enjoyed it. So my other answer for this question would be Just for the Summer, which is technically a sequel because it's in an interconnected series. And really, I would say it's a sequel for Part of Your World. It's definitely a sequel to that one. There is overlap with Yours Truly, but I feel like it's a sequel. And if you are on BookTube at all, you've already heard about this book. It's great. I don't know anyone who hasn't given it like 4.5 or 5 stars. Such a good book. Check it out. But if you are going to pick up Part of Your World first. Number 3. New release you haven't read yet but want to. I have 3 books on here. I want to read Summer Romance, which I have checked out from the library right now. So I will be reading that this week. So I'm super excited. By Annabelle Monaghan. I feel like I discovered her last year and no one was talking about her. She wrote Nora Goes Off Script and This Time Next Summer, I think is what it's called. And I loved Nora Goes Off Script, and This Time Next Summer I also really enjoyed. So I was super excited for this new release. And now I feel like Book Talk and the BookTube community has picked up on it, and they are all reading it, and I'm really happy for her because I really like her books. Contemporary romance, but, and I'm not a big contemporary romance girl, but I really like her writing. The other one is The Owl and the Orchid by Mariah. I'll put it on the screen. She is actually a local author, and that's really cool. I already had her book on my TBR before I realized that she lives like just the next town over from me. Just the fact that like I already picked up this author's book and then found out she's an indie author, that she lives like 15 minutes away from me in a tiny little town in Idaho is pretty cool. So I'm excited to read her book and support her as an indie author. Plus I've heard really good things about it. And then I also want to read 5 Broken Blades because I've heard really good things about that one. And I have it on my shelf, but I just haven't had time to physically read it. So I'm waiting for the audiobook from the library. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of 2024. I feel like there's a ton of new releases coming out, but then when I read the question, I couldn't think of anything. So what I do know is I want to read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I like Sally Rooney. I'm a Sally Rooney girl. And Shadow and Storms, the audiobook, which is the 4th book in the Legends of Thesmore series. So this book has already been released as a book, but the audiobook doesn't come out until September. And since I am an audiobook girly, I haven't gotten to the 4th book yet. I'm waiting for the audiobook. So really looking forward to that release. Next question. Biggest disappointment so far in 2024. I think I was really disappointed by the Ever King. I saw really good things about it and I liked her writing, but I just was expecting to be wowed by it. And I love books that take place like on a ship at sea. I like the idea of like sea creatures and mermaids, but I don't know what it was. It wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And I feel sad saying that, but it just wasn't. In fact, the sequel came out after I read it and I still haven't picked it up because it hasn't really been a priority. So number 6. Biggest surprise. So biggest surprise. The One Dark Window duology. Like I said, was not expecting to enjoy that because I generally don't like kind of like that gothic, dark fantasy setting. I do love dark academia, but generally don't like the dark fantasy, the gothic kind of that overlaps with horror. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It really surprised me. And I think it's just because I had really low expectations. So, you know, it's nice to have low expectations sometimes and to be surprised by books. My other surprises were The Last Love Note. I just hadn't really heard anything about it. And the only reason I knew anything about that book was because my best friend read it and raved about it and was like, this is my favorite book of the year so far. And so I was like, well, okay, this is her favorite book. I have to pick it up. And I just couldn't believe it. I loved it so well. And again, I said this in the last question, but it just covers the topic of grief so well. So if you've dealt with grief recently, or you've dealt with losing a partner, whether it was recently or in the past, I felt like it was really well done. And there's also like a single mom component to it, because obviously when you lose a partner, you become a single parent. And there was a lot I could relate to there. So I thought both the single parenting aspect while grieving, like the grief was done well, but then the single parenting while grieving was done very well, because I have been, I didn't lose my partner. I went through a divorce. I'm a single parent, and I did lose my brother this year unexpectedly, and I have been really deeply grieving and dealing with that kind of grief while continuing to be a single parent and having little people that rely on me and having to take care of them. Like, I can't just let my grief consume me. So it's been really hard, and I just feel like that book was so relatable for me and done so well. And then finally, Carrie Soto was back. I just, you know, I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't know why I had low expectations. I heard mixed reviews about this book. I don't know what it was. I honestly don't know. For some reason, it didn't really appeal to me. It took me forever to pick it up. And then I was so pleasantly surprised. I really loved it. So I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. Question number 7, new or new to you favorite author? And I would say Sarah A. Parker, who is When the Moon Hatched. In fact, because I loved her writing so much in that book, and the sequel does not come out until next year, I am reading her backlist right now. I'm reading her other series, and you can see my thoughts about that one in my reading vlogs. So go check those out if you want to know what I think. And then Emma Gray, which was The Last Love Note. I believe she's an Australian author, and I just haven't heard that much about her, but her writing is phenomenal, and she's actually coming out with a new book too. It's just not on my list because I don't think it's coming out this year, maybe early next year. Newest fictional crush. Okay, again, if you didn't watch my last reading vlog, or my first reading vlog, I should say, my June reading vlog, then you don't know that Khan has my heart forever. Khan is the male love interest in When the Moon Hatched, and he's my favorite ever. I love him so much. He is my book boyfriend. I've never really been into the book boyfriend thing, but I love him forever. He's the best. He's so good. Newest favorite character, aside from my book boyfriend, of course. Number 9 is the newest favorite character, and I have a few. I really liked Kiva from The Prison Healer, which also is a series I really fell in love with this year. I've really had a good reading year. Like, 2024 has been a great reading year for me. I've read so many amazing books. Okay, sorry, needed a drink. I'm out here in the West. Everything is on fire. Our air quality sucks. There's so much smoke, and my skin, my eyes, my throat, everything is dried out and super irritated. So anyway, I've been drinking a ton of water. Rune from The Crimson Moth, or Heartless Hunter, depending on where you live, it's different titles. Really loved her. Rave from When the Moon Hatched. And all of these are just like badass female main characters. So of course, I love them. And then I love Javi from Carrie Soto is Back. That's Carrie Soto's dad. I adored him. I absolutely adored him. He was so wise and so witty and funny, and I loved him. The other character I fell in love with is, I forget his name. It is the little boy from The Prison Healer. Tip. Okay, Tip is a little boy in the Prison Healer series. I also love him. Like, I would do anything for Tip. Would do anything for Tip. He is the cutest, and I love him. Okay, moving on. Question number 10. Books that made you cry. You guys, I am not a big book crier, but I went back and looked at my Goodreads account because I will, because I don't cry very often in books, and I feel like people are always asking, tell me a book that made you cry. I was like, I need to pay better attention. So I started putting in my Goodreads reviews whether or not a book made me cry. And so I went back and looked at my Goodreads for the year, and I've actually cried a lot. And I don't know if it's because the books made me cry or if it's because I'm grieving, like I said, so I'm very sensitive and my emotions are kind of at the surface right now. So I'm crying more easily with everything. I'm not sure, but here are the books that made me cry. The bonus chapter, the Target bonus chapter in Crescent City 3, okay? It totally made me cry. It was a happy cry, but I cried. I totally cried in the bonus chapter of that book. Secondly, The Last Love Note. Again, it's about love and loss and grief. I mean, I cried, okay? Carrie Soto is back. If you know, you know. That book made me cry. Expiration Dates. That is a book by Rebecca Searle, and I love her. I think she's totally underrated. It's a really good book. It's like a contemporary, I would say women's fiction. She writes women's fiction with elements of romance. And Expiration Dates just hit me, man. That was a cathartic cry. That was like, I just cried and I felt so much better afterwards. Like, yeah, that was a good book. Sorrow and Bliss. Okay, Sorrow and Bliss made me sob. Like, I bawled. For me, this book was the right book at the right time. And it's a book about mental illness and being close to somebody who has mental illness, which is a situation that I'm in. That is my circumstance. I'm very close to somebody who has a really severe mental illness, and it is really tough. And it's tough to watch them go through it, but it's also tough as a family member to be in their life, in their inner circle. And that book is all about living with mental illness and people around you who love you living with the person with mental illness. And I mean, I sobbed. And I also felt super seen and understood. I felt like I had breakthroughs, and it was done so well. I feel like that book is very underrated. Highly, highly recommend. And then just for the summer, you guys, I made a reel about it. I read the quote, my favorite quote at the end. I think you're probably familiar with it. I think a lot of people liked this quote. Okay, I cannot read that quote without crying. It's happy tears, but it gets me every time. Number 11. Books that made you happy. Guys, I read so many good books, but books that really made me happy. Okay, When the Moon Hatched. I'm sorry, like, overall, When the Moon Hatched is going to take a lot of overall awards because it was just so good. I'll never shut up about it. I'm never going to stop talking about When the Moon Hatched. It made me so happy because I just hadn't found a book that I felt like was Throne of Glass tier quality since reading Throne of Glass. I had read like 50 or more books, and just nothing made me as excited and happy as the Throne of Glass until I read When the Moon Hatched. And I was like, oh my gosh, this book might be as good as the Throne of Glass series. And that just made me so happy. And then I will add to that the Everflame series by Penn Cole, which I'm in the middle of. Okay, I haven't finished yet, but the first 3 books, extremely promising. It is a 5-star series so far. It is trending to be a 5-star overall favorite series. Okay, also makes me very happy for the same reason. And then I will also say A Curse for True Love, which is the 3rd book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. That series, I mean, it's just fun, you guys. It's like nostalgic fairy tale. It's really, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it's just got that. It's got a lot of nostalgia for me. It feels very old school fairy tale, like Princess Bride-esque, which is what I grew up with, and like Never Ending Story, like just that type of fairy tale. And so it just makes me happy. And I know a lot of people were let down by that book, but I really liked it. I really liked the 3rd book. Well, you know what? Okay, wait. I'm going to add a 3rd book to this. Books that made me happy. I just finished this last week, The Collected Regrets of Clover. Now, that book also talks about grief and death and dying, but it also has a love story in it. And it made me happy. It's just so wholesome. It's one of those books that's so wholesome and sweet and just like feel good by the end. You're just like feel good about life and living. Yeah, that book made me happy. Question number 12. Favorite book to movie adaptation you've seen so far this year? I don't watch a lot of TV and I don't go to the movies very often. All I have here are TV adaptations that I've watched. So the first one is Black Cake, which was on Hulu. I watched this with my partner, and he hadn't read the book, but he watched the TV series with me. He really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a really good job. Very well done. And if you haven't read the book, but you're interested in this story, highly recommend watching. I thought it was very, very good. And then, of course, Heartstopper, the series on Netflix. I haven't even finished the graphic novel series. So I started with the Netflix series. And so I don't know. Can I count that? Can I include that even though I haven't read the books? I don't know. But I like the Netflix series. Okay. Number 13. Favorite review you've written so far this year. Okay. If you are on Goodreads and we aren't friends, what are you even doing? Go find me. I will leave a link in the description box below. But I'm the Modern Bookwoman, okay? I'm the Modern Bookwoman everywhere, so it should be easy to find. Some of the reviews, I went back and looked at them, that I really went into detail about and gave a lot of critiques or like had really reflective reviews about was Babel, Tom Lake, Sorrow and Bliss, and Bright Young Women. So if you're on Goodreads, go check those reviews out. I just go into more depth about why I liked the books, what I thought they did really well, and then more on whatever social topics they were talking about. I think all of those I reviewed because the book covers social issues that I'm passionate about. And so I talked about that in my book review, and I thought they were well done. The most beautiful book you bought this year. Okay, The Crimson Moth, I just love all the covers, okay? I made a whole reel about it because I have like 5 editions of one book, okay? I know it's a little extreme, but like I love all of them and I can't give any of them up because they're so beautiful. And my other favorite purchase is not technically the books, but I bought the dust jackets to the Throne of Glass series from IridescentFairytale, and I will link them in the description box below. And those are my favorite covers. I will put some B-roll in here of those books because I have them like all displayed on my bookshelf upstairs. I'm not going to bring them down, but I'll insert it here so you can see how beautiful they are, and also of my Crimson Moth / Heartless Hunter covers. Question number 15. What books do you really need to read by the end of the year? I really need to read The Women by Kristen Hanna. I know I'm going to love it. I also know it's going to like tear my heart out because all of her books do. And I just haven't been in a mental or emotional space where I was like ready for that. So I definitely need to read it before the end of the year, but I got to be in the mood for it. Favorite new book influencer you discovered in 2024? Okay, Sarah, looking at you, girl. Sarah, I think it's Sarah's Cozy Corner. I will link her down below. I will tag her. Go check her out. I absolutely adore her. She is my YouTube bestie and she's fabulous, okay? She lives in New Zealand. She does amazing, like cozy, comfy reading vlogs and like TBR, like really fun TBR videos. Just go check her out. I'll link her below, okay? Absolutely love her. Rereads in 2024. That's question number 17. Throne of Glass was on my rereads list for 2024, and I reread the entire Throne of Glass series from April through May. So like in a 2-month period. Me and a few of my friends who also love Throne of Glass, we buddy read it over about an 8-week period. So I already reread the series, still love it as much the second time, if not more than I did the first time. Still my favorite fantasy series of all time. That's completed. I already reread When the Moon Hatched a week after reading it the first time, so mentioned that. I already reread The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I love that book, and I was curious if I was going to love it as much the second time, and I absolutely did. So if you have not read Alex E. Harrow, I highly recommend her books. I love everything of hers that I've read, but The Once and Future Witches is my favorite. It's so good. I plan to reread Project Hail Mary before the end of the year. That's another buddy read I'm doing with my friend. And then I'm also going to reread The Nightingale because I read The Nightingale like 2 years ago. When did I read it? Hold on. I'm going to tell you right now. So I read The Nightingale in 2022. So like 2.5 years ago. I loved it. And that was before it got popular on Book Talk and BookTube. And then everybody started reading it. Okay. These are the moments, you guys, that I'm like, this is why I have a YouTube channel now, because I feel like I know good books. And it's like, I was trying to get everybody to read that book, and now everybody has read that book. And I'm like, I've been saying that forever. I love when books that I love get popular. It makes me very happy for the book and for the author. So I've done most of my rereads already, but what I'm going to do Project Hail Mary and The Nightingale before the end of the year. Books I've been putting off. The Winners in the Beartown series by Frederick Backman. I started that book when it came out. I reread Beartown and Us Against Them, and then I started The Winners, and I got like halfway through, and then I got disrupted, and I just couldn't come back to it. Like, I couldn't be in the frame of mind. Backman books, he's one of my favorite authors, but I have to be like in the right frame of mind, and I never came back to it. And at this point, I'm probably just gonna have to start it over and reread the first half again so I can remember all the details. Although I actually kind of feel like I remember what was happening, which is very rare. Anyway, I've been putting off finishing that. I've been putting off Bookshops and Bone Dust. I don't know why. It doesn't interest me. It should, but for some reason it just doesn't interest me as much as Legends and Lattes did. And then I heard some disappointing reviews, and now I'm just like, I don't know. Like, should I read it? You guys, if you've read it, let me know what you thought about it. Tell me in the comments if I should read it. And then Ember in the Ashes, the 4th book. I think it's called Sky in the Storm or something like that. What is it called? A Sky Beyond the Storm. I really was enjoying this series. But the 3rd book got really long for me, and it kind of just, I got bored or something. I'm not sure. It was just a lot for me to finish book 3. And so I just didn't have the interest in book 4, but I've heard good things about it, and it has good ratings. And I want to finish the series. I mean, it's only 4 books long, and I've read 3 out of the 4 books. So I feel like I should just finish it and read the 4th book. Because I am enjoying the series, and I still think about that series. I still think about it. So I need to. I don't know why. I've just been putting it off. So that's on my list. Okay, number 19, unpopular opinions. I will start with Ruthless Vows, which is the sequel to Divine Rivals. So many people were so disappointed with that sequel, but I actually really liked it. I don't know why people didn't like it, but I really did. I won't give any spoilers, but there is an element to the sequel that is more prevalent in the 2nd book than the 1st book that I could relate to. So it was relatable for me, so I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I don't know why everyone was so disappointed. Also, I think that Atlas 6 is super underrated. I loved Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, and I feel like there's a lot of mixed opinions about her books, but I loved Atlas 6. I liked Atlas, what is it? What's the second one? Atlas, I can't remember. The 2nd book, I liked it. The 3rd book, I still don't know how I feel, The Atlas Complex. It just came out this year, and I read it, and honestly, still haven't rated it. Like, it's still been sitting on Goodreads unrated because I just wasn't sure how I felt about it. I'm glad I read it. I'm not, like, disappointed that I read it by any means, but it also isn't a 5-star. I just don't know what to rate it. But back to the question, which is unpopular opinions. I really liked Atlas 6. I think it's highly underrated. I think Olivia Blake is highly, highly underrated. I adore her writing. Number 20. Series to finish before the end of the year. So Legends of Thesmar, which I already mentioned. I'm waiting for the audiobook to come out with the 4th book. But so far, it's a very good series. I'm very excited for the 4th book, and I've heard nothing but really good things about the 4th book. So hoping that that is worth the wait and that I end up loving it as much as everyone else did. Need to finish Winners from the Beartown series, which we just talked about. I need to finish the Daughter of No Worlds series. I think it's called the War of Broken Hearts or Broken Heart Wars, or I can't remember what the series name is, but it's the Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. And then I started the Parallel series by L. O'Rourke. I believe she's an indie author. And Sam Reads a Little. She recommended that series, and I bought the books for my birthday at the beginning of the year, and I read the first 2 books, loved them, started the third book, but the second, like, duology. It's like 2 duologies that are interconnected. Started the second duology, can't remember. Something happened in my life, and I got pulled away. And these are books that I only have the physical book for, which just takes me longer to get to and to get through because I don't have as much time to physically read. And so I get through things a lot faster if I have the audiobook, but the audiobooks are harder to get. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get to them, but I am really enjoying that series and I want to finish it before the end of the year. 5-star predictions. I predict that the winners in the Beartown trilogy will be 5 stars. I predict that The Women by Kristen Hanna will be 5 stars. I predict that the Daughter of No Worlds series will be 5 stars overall. I rated the first book 5 stars. And I've just heard nothing but good things. I think I'm going to love it. So I predict that I will overall rate that series 5 stars. I also at this point predict that I will rate the Kindred's Curse saga, which is the Everflame series, that I will overall rate that a 5-star series as well. So I don't know when that 4th book is coming out because her release got delayed, but it should be coming out at some point this year and I cannot wait. It's definitely my most anticipated release at this point. Number 22. Will you reach your goal? My goal in Goodreads was 150, and that was really just a number. I don't really care about the number, you guys. I mainly do it so that I can keep track of my reads in Goodreads, because if you set a numerical goal in Goodreads, then it tracks all your reading for the year in a specific place for the year 2024. And it's just easier to reference at a glance and see what books I've read and what I've rated them. And it will show like in what order I read books, when I read them, what I rated them. And then it will kind of show me based on my reading speed, I guess, or like my reading habits for the year, up to date, how many books I am predicted to read by the end of the year. So as of right now, my goal was 150. I've already read 98 books so far this year, and we're only halfway, so I'll meet my goal. But again, I don't care. The number of books you read does not matter, okay? What matters is that you're reading books you love, books that bring you value, and that you're happy doing it. That's all. It doesn't matter how fast or how many you read, okay? So, or how you read them. If it's audio or ebook or physical book, it doesn't matter, as long as you're consuming the books. 23, DNFs. You guys, I've actually DNF'd so many books this year. I have been ruthless. I've been such a mood reader, and because I've been grieving this year, like I've had a lot of depression because of grief. So my brother passed away in November, and so I kind of was just like a zombie all through the holidays, and then it really hit me like in January, and throughout this year I've been grieving, and it's really hit me hard. This first year is just so hard. It's so hard. So I think because of my grief and my depression and having all these feelings, I have been a very picky reader, and I've been a mood reader for the last couple of years, but I've been a very moody mood reader this year. So if I start reading a book and I'm not feeling it, I DNF it. And a lot of times those are soft DNFs, like I'll come back to it, but if I can tell I'm not in the mood for it, I'm not going to read it, because why? It's a waste of my time, and it's not doing the author or the book any justice. Why read a book when you know you're not in the mood for it? You know that you're not going to give it a favorable response if you're not in the mood. So I've DNF'd more than I can say, but my most recent DNF was a novel love story by Ashley Poston, which just makes me sad because I had really high hopes for that book. I would say that book was one of my bigger disappointments as well. I got like 40% in, and I wasn't into it, you guys. I just don't feel like it was the same quality. I don't think this one was a mood thing. Did not like the audiobook. I was listening to the audio. I really didn't like the narrator, but it wasn't just the narration. If I give it a go again, it'll definitely be physically reading the book. Number 24. You guys have only 2 more questions. Okay, we're almost done. Number 24. Book you've recommended the most in 2024. Question number 24 in 2024. The Silence That Binds Us, just because I think everybody should read it. I think it's accessible reading for everyone, and I think it's extremely inspiring, enlightening, and just a topic we need to read more about and learn more about. Everyone should go read that book. And then also When the Moon Hatched, because as we've already been over, it's just so good. I'm just obsessed. I just won't shut up about it. And then question number 25, this is the final question, you guys, is the best audiobook. Now, here's the thing. I might be different from a lot of booktubers because I primarily listen to my books. So almost every book I've read was an audiobook, minus like, I think I've maybe physically read 3 books where I didn't listen to the audio, and then there's definitely been several where I listen to the audio and I physically read, and I tandem read, and I go back and forth, or I do it at the same time. But regardless, there's been an audio component to almost every book I've read. So I've read like 90 something audiobooks I've listened to this year. So for me to just say like the best audiobook is really hard, because basically all the books I've already talked about that I loved, or that were 5 stars, or that were my favorite books, or that surprised me or made me happy or whatever, those were all audiobooks. They were all great audiobooks. If I don't like the audiobook, I'm not going to listen to it, and therefore it wouldn't be on my list because I would have DNF'd it. But what I will say, as even though this isn't one of my favorite books, and I don't even think I gave it 5 stars, I think I gave it maybe 4 or 4.5 stars. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I thought that audiobook was phenomenal because it was multiple media, and just the voices and the different media components, because it like had like a podcast recording and different types of media as part of the audio, which is really just a unique experience, and I feel like it really added to the experience. So if you are going to read that book, which it was really good. I've read so many good books this year that it just doesn't stack up with some of my other 5-star reads that I've read. But it was very good. I do recommend the book. If you're into like a thriller or suspense, I think Lisa Jewell does them very well. And that audiobook was really good. Highly recommend the audiobook. If you've done the Mid-Year Freakout Tag, let me know in the comments so I can go check out your video, because like I said, I love watching these videos. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I read and loved, or let me know if you've read and loved any of the books that are on my TBR for this year. And that's it, you guys. We made it! Thank you so much for being here with me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!